those who can't be here live with us will have access to this important training. I welcome you to Bridging the Divide to Emotional Wellness, connecting underserved populations to mental health care during COVID-19. We appreciate those of you who have registered and signed on, and we think this morning is going to provide some important need-to-know information that you can use in your work. I want to welcome our panelists today. I'm going to do a brief overview of who the panelists are, and you will get to know them much more throughout the course of this session. First, Sandra Victorino, Director of Workforce Development, Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations with Care New England. She's been very helpful in the development of this particular webinar. Thank you, Sandra, and welcome. Jennifer Gaviria, she is a clinical faculty collaborative partnerships for preventative mental health services at Thunder Mist. She is a certified mental health first aid trainer and is going to share some important information with us today. So thank you, Jennifer, for being here. Dee Dee Williams, who is the director of the BH Link call center and internship programs at Horizon Health Partners. She's gonna be talking to us about referrals and how to access care. Joining her in that part of today's conversation is Christine King, who is the executive director at the Interfaith Counseling Center. The Counseling Center offers support to all in need and provides mental health counseling and case management and referral advocacy. She'll be able to talk a bit more about that and about the range of services that are available out in the community. And Seamus Dirac, who's staff attorney with the Rhode Island Parent Information Network. He runs the RIPIN Health Insurance Consumer Helpline. He's going to talk a bit about cost and coverage as it relates to mental health services. So I welcome all of our panelists and thank you again for participating today. I just want to quickly review the agenda. We are going to, after this opening welcome session, we're going to get right into the topic of supporting mental well-being in your community, talking about awareness, signs and symptoms, and some mental health first aid tips, tools, and a bit about the fuller-fledged mental health first aid training. We're going to talk about accessing services and programs and how you can assist people in accessing those. And we'll talk about health insurance coverage and cost. We want today to be interactive, and we know that all of you who are have registered and are participating in this webinar have a wealth of information to share. If during the conversation you think of a program that may be available or a strategy you've used that's been successful, please share it in the chat so that others can see that. We will save a copy of the chat as well and compile into resources any of those pieces of information that you share out of your own experience. But we also want you to be able to engage with today's panelists by asking questions. And to do that, you can use the Q&A. So to use the chat, you should see in your Zoom menu bar the chat function. If you don't see it, it might be under More in your little control panel, as mine is because I'm screen sharing right now. And to do that, you just click the chat button. It opens a little panel. You type your message into the text box at the bottom of the panel and you press enter. And then all of the other participants in today's webinar can see that. To ask questions, you simply click the Q&A button, which also should be right at the bottom of your Zoom control bar. Type your question into the field. And if you want your question to be anonymous, you can check the Send Anonymous checkbox. Although remember, all questions are important. And then click Send. Lori Marie Peixoto, who is our executive director at the Mental Health Association of Rhode Island, is online, and you may see her in the video feed. Hi, Lori. She's going to be helping to manage the Q&A and the chat functions. And later in today's poll, today's session, we're going to launch a live poll that you will be able to respond to. So watch for that, and we'll give you a heads up on that. And I think I may have forgotten to introduce myself. I'm a little nervous. I apologize. My name is Karen Malcolm, and I am the project manager at the Mental Health Association. And I work specifically on issues of mental health parity, which Seamus will talk a bit about later. So I want to turn it over to Jennifer and Sandra to talk a little bit about how we can all contribute to supporting mental well-being in our communities. Sandra, Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us and inviting me for this important event. You know, obviously this is very brief, but these are some just tips that we're going to go over about how to notice when, you know, people's mental well-being might be changing. And, you know, of course, a lot of it has to do with COVID-19 and the stress that we're having, this added stress. So I just wanted to start with a little bit about like recognizing some signs and symptoms. So, you know, one of the most important things is recognizing when someone's sleep is changing. You know, they might be sleeping more or sleeping less. Their appetite might be changing as well. So they might be eating more or eating less, or binging. There could also be changes in mood. So people might seem more irritable to you, or they might be crying more sensitive. Those are all kind of signs that we might want to be looking for. And any changes in personal hygiene. So, you know, someone that, you know, used to always get dressed up, they're not doing that anymore. I mean, I know we're all working from home, but if you're living with them, if they're not, you know, taking a shower every day and they used to, those are all important signs of someone's mental well-being. Sandra, if you want to add anything?
Yes. So I would say withdrawal. If someone is active and they're withdrawing, and I know it's right now with COVID, one of the things is that everybody's finding a new way of being. And so sometimes it's just important to check in with people and ask to see how they're doing, and how we can help them. If we're noticing, I've noticed that there's some patterns where people aren't calling as much, or they're not talking on the phone. They were at the beginning, now they're not. So really using our technology to kind of monitor that as well, and how someone engages or doesn't engage, using FaceTime or some form of virtual video conferencing, if possible, is always really important, because then you can see the person rather than just listening to them on the phone.
Yes, I agree with Sandra. And also when we're talking about these signs and symptoms, I just want to you all to think about the frequency, right? So if it's happening, you know, once a week, then maybe it's not something that we're too worried about. We might still want to approach the person, but if it's something that's happening, you know, 2 weeks in a row and you don't see a change, then we might be more concerned. So just thinking about the frequency of the symptoms as well is important to think about. Did you want to add anything else, Sandra?
No, I think that's all. Thank you, Jen.
Okay. And then, you know, once you are recognizing, you know, someone's mental well-being is changing, then we want to have that conversation. And that's the kind of the hard part, right? That, you know, we don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or it's uncomfortable. Like we don't really want to do it. We're not really trained to do it. That's why there's a mental health first aid, which I'll talk about a little bit more. You know, the first thing is just asking someone, like, how have you been feeling? You know, we don't want to attack someone, but, you know, just say, you know, how have you been? Like, this has been really difficult for me. I'm wondering if it's been difficult for you. And just stating, a matter of fact, like, I've noticed, you know, that you haven't talked to me as much as you used to. Like, you know, what's going on? Have you been really busy with work, or is there something else? You know, I'm here for you to talk. Listening and be empathetic. So like really letting that person talk and listening to them. Sometimes we, you know, say, sometimes we focus a lot about ourselves. So just listening about how they're feeling and being empathetic. Um, and then if, you know, they disclose to you that they are struggling with their mental health, and that it's been very hard for them, and you have concerns, you know, offering support, talking to them, and then really helping them seek treatment. Um, and at the end of the presentation, we're going to talk about some resources about where you can go with them to seek some treatment, if it is needed. I would say, you know, uh, they should seek treatment when, um, you know, the symptoms have gone on for, you know, 2 weeks or more, and things are not changing, and they've tried, you know, self-care activities and it's just not working. That's when you should seek treatment. If there's any suicidal ideation, so they're having thoughts of hurting themselves or hurting others, that, or any hallucinations, those are all, you know, really important and should be treated. Sandra, do you have to add?
So one of the things that we have to take into consideration is that, you know, this isn't, mental health has not always had the best name. And so really acknowledging when we're having these conversations, acknowledging that. And I think to Jennifer's, what Jennifer was saying is accurate in sharing about ourselves, and showing that vulnerability can sometimes help someone then be vulnerable with us. Our tone is really important. You know, people have histories in past and we don't know what may trigger them. So really trying to be there present for them, and doing check-ins, and just sending a text message, sending a card, sending a note, checking in with our loved ones is really important. In this, and especially in this time, we're used to going, and we were part of an environment that was just moving, and all of a sudden it became a stop, and we don't know how to operate in it. And so everybody's finding a new way, and it's really important for us to just take that into consideration when we're having these conversations and center ourselves around that. And, you know, I think the check-ins are really, really important, because the more we check in, the more likely someone is to then respond to us and saying, hey, you know, you've been checking in on me and asking. And I do that through text. Via text is one of the ways that I do it, because sometimes that person may not like to talk on the phone. And so they would be irritated if I called them on the phone regardless. So checking in with them in their way, and the way that they can respond to us.
I agree, Sandra. And, you know, kind of related to that, just because we ask those questions, the person might not be ready at that time, but continuing to, you know, gently ask, you know, let's try again next week, because someone might not be ready yet. And that's okay as well. So I
And
just wanted to mention that as well.
yeah, it is okay. It is okay. And it's normalizing that. And because sometimes we become so worried that we may press, and that press may cause someone to withdraw. So we want to make sure that it's a tricky little balance, but it's really trying to be empathetic and being there for them whenever they're ready to come to us, and being welcoming when they do come to us. The other thing is that if someone, it does get to the point where they may need treatment, and going to see a therapist is, I think, one of the most difficult things that I've heard people say that they had the first time that they went. So understanding it doesn't matter someone's educational, you know, background, or, you know, socioeconomic status. It is a really difficult thing for someone to walk in and then give all of their emotions to another human being. So walking them through and asking them, do you want me to sit with you and call? You know, how were you able to make an appointment? Do you want me to go with you on your first visit when we were going in person? Or do you want me to be in the space when you're having, now that we're doing everything through telehealth? So how much support does that person need to be able to connect, and being sensitive about those needs, because it's not just like going to make a PCP appointment, or primary care appointment, and going to see a doctor, even though sometimes even some people have difficulty with that. And we've seen that within our community and culture. So just being sensitive about those things is not as easy as just giving someone a phone number either.
Yes, Sandra, you brought up a lot of good points. And I also wanted to include, I know that we have a lot of community health workers and people working in the community, and they might, interact with different people, and, people's understanding of mental well-being is different, and culture also plays a role. So sometimes people also need a lot of education about, like, okay, if we go to a therapist, like, what does that mean and what does that look like, and explaining that to people, because sometimes people think I'm gonna have to be hospitalized, and it's all in a continuum, like not everyone's gonna have to be hospitalized, but some people don't understand that that's what they have been brought up to think. So it's important to give them that information, like there's a difference between going to therapy versus a partial program versus being hospitalized, and it's okay if you need any of those, but this is what it means, and these are your rights that you have as well if you have to enter any of those programs, because sometimes people think like they're going to be going to jail or something instead of getting treatment and healing. um, so having those conversations as well is important as you're working directly with people in the community.
Yes, I agree, Jennifer. And the other piece of that is when we talk about these things, people are more likely to have conversations with us when it's not working. And if they know what to expect or how to walk through that, and then you walk them through that process, they're likely to say, I don't know if this is working. I've had many people tell me, they go to the first session and they're like, I don't think this is working. And I said, give it 3 sessions. I always tell someone to give everything 3 appointments. And by the 3rd appointment, if you don't feel comfortable, then we need to have another conversation. And it's important to leave it open to someone not feeling comfortable with therapy either. And what's going on? Is it the relationship with the therapist and the client that isn't working out? Do they need a different type of person to provide that treatment? I mean, there's many different types of therapists and social workers, psychologists that can provide they have different specialties, and that may help someone feel more comfortable. There have been people that have just knowing that I was Latina, they felt comfortable sitting with me and having conversations. So many of us out in the community, and it's important for someone to feel completely comfortable with that person, because then you never get to that point of really feeling that relief.
Guys, we have a couple questions that I think are very pertinent to the conversation right now. I'm going to read the first one. There's a bit of a crossover here to discussing access points to care. But from Adrienne Bagan, she asked the question that she's had an issue in having someone finally admit that they need someone to talk with. But then running up against the barrier that they can't find a therapist or a program that is accepting new patients. I know that this gets into our next topic area a bit, but maybe some conversation about how you help someone through that challenge.
Yeah, so I mean, that happens a lot, working here at Thundermist when I connect patients as well to other programs. And I think the first thing is really giving, the people that you're working with the information from the beginning, and, what the expectations are, that, this is frustrating, and, the system kind of works this way, but I'm here for you. I'm here to support you through it. I'll try to advocate for you, so that they kind of know that there might be a wait list, but like I have, for them until they get where they need to go. That's kind of what I would recommend. Because I think when people understand, why there's a wait list, then they're going to be a little bit more patient. If we don't really explain to them why, then I think that builds frustration. So I'm really, an advocate for being transparent and just kind of explaining the system, because it is complex for us in the field. So for people that are not in the field, it can be very overwhelming, and people sometimes do need an advocate to call different places, to have a representative to kind of maybe sometimes get in there faster. So that's what I would recommend.
So, and also because there is a wait time, using other community resources that can help someone hold them through that gap. Through NAMI, through, there are many different groups of support, peer specialists, different work, and really, so I would really learn the line of access, because sometimes that ends up helping along the way before they can see a therapist, because it is very difficult to find a therapist. And when the access, we'll talk about the access points. I can add a little bit to it at that point as well. But those peer supports out in the community are extremely important and can help sometimes fill that gap. So the burden isn't just on the person that is treating that one person.
And that follows up the second question, which I think Wendy Sanchez is asking. And I think, Wendy, you're going to get an answer to this as we move through this agenda, but how to find another way if therapists aren't taking new clients or booking, either due to COVID or because of the quantity of people accessing services. That is something that we are going to talk about, and that Sandra just alluded to, in terms of the range of programming and more informal access points and advocacy that community health workers and neighborhood leaders and community activists can provide. So we'll get more into that later in the agenda. And Jennifer, you were going to talk a bit about what is actually involved. One way we can help build beyond the pandemic in our communities is for those of us who are working in the field in our neighborhoods, in our communities, take the step to take mental health first aid training. So you're going to talk a little bit about that and what's involved.
Yes, and to the person that just made the comment about what else can they do, and it's also related to mental health first aid, is that our interactions can be therapeutic. They're not therapy, but they can be therapeutic. So the way that we interact with the person that we're working with can help them, can be supportive too. So don't underestimate the role that you have as well. So a little bit about mental health first aid. So because of COVID, they have actually rolled out a blended program as well. So it's the mental health first aid is a training. So we want to think about it kind of like CPR for mental health, right? So it doesn't mean that when you get CPR trained, it doesn't mean that you're now a medical professional, right? But it's a training that CPR is a training, when there's an emergency, for you to be able to respond until the professionals get there. So that's what mental health first aid is. It's giving you the tools to provide support to that person until they are able to start working with a professional. So it's a 5-step action plan that you learn called ALGAE. So you learn to ask the questions, right? So I went over a little bit in the other slide about asking questions, but we really go deeper into it and practice as well. So it's very hands-on, so that you do feel comfortable when you are faced with that situation to ask those questions. Like ask someone, are you having thoughts of killing yourself? Are you having hallucinations? You also learn, how to listen, be empathetic. We practice those skills, and you learn how to give that information, give resources, and encourage them to seek help. And then part of it, because now it's all virtual, it's a 2-hour self-paced training. So that means that once you enroll into mental health first aid, you get a link to a video, which is 2 hours, and it has an overview of different diagnoses. So depression, anxiety, substance use, trauma. So you do that all on your own. And then the second part of it is a 5.5 hour training on Zoom. And it does include a half-hour break. And that's where you're going to learn the 5-step action plan, the ALGE, and it's going to be very interactive, and it's going to help you develop those skills so that when you are, working with clients, you're able to utilize them. And it started off in Australia. All over. There's a lot of trainers. And it's based on research. It's been very effective, and it really helps to give people in the community confidence to start having those questions. And the goal too is to decrease stigma, to be able to talk about mental well-being and mental health.
I would add to this, and I think in some of my conversations I've had in the community and in research that we are doing currently and have done via the Mental Health Association, there really is a shortage of mental health clinicians, trained mental health clinicians who are available to support people in their native language, who are bilingual, bicultural. And I think that the opportunity that we have to build better out of this awful crisis that we're all experiencing is to expand the scope of people who have some training and some learning curve expertise to improve on that situation. And I think that mental health first aid training for those of us out working in the community and in the field is so important. And it adds to and improves our system for the long haul over decades, and could really shift where we are as a state and as a community. So I encourage people. Sandra, did you want to add anything to this, or should we go ahead and launch the live poll to see how many folks are interested? Our hope is that we can, out of this, offer a free training to people participating today who might be interested in going deeper.
So the only thing I have to add, Karen, is that we as people within our families, not as myself as a therapist or out as the person that I'm out in the community, sometimes if I didn't have the skill set as a mental health therapist, I wouldn't be able to help people connect. And I feel that the mental health first aid training helps with that, for people that don't know how to see those signs and symptoms, and really help be that conduit and that connector and make that bridge happen. And so it allows us also as those that don't have the skill set, those, that I've met, to say, I felt a little more confident in helping make that transition for someone. And so I think that's really what it helps. It just helps educate us. And so that's all. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm going to ask Lori to launch that live poll. How this works is you're going to see a poll. The panelists aren't part of the poll. You're going to see the poll. It's up now, and it asks the question, would you register for a free mental health first aid training? Yes or no? Very simple. We really want to gauge interest so we know what we're working with in terms of moving forward and pulling this together. We're going to leave the poll up. It's been up for about 23 seconds. As long as we see people continuing to respond, we'll leave it up. If in the meantime you have a further question for either Jennifer or Sandra, feel free to post that as we wait for the poll results to come in. They're coming in nice and strong, so thank you. And we're going to begin the transition to discussing access points. Talking about that today, as I said, is Dee Dee Williams, Director of the BH Link Call Center, and Christine King, the Executive Director at the Interfaith Counseling Center. We've got 100% response on the poll, so thank you all. It looks like 31 of you, 91% of those 34 who voted are interested. And I'm not surprised, because I think it's an amazing opportunity and resource for each of us as individuals and for our communities. So thank you. All of you will be kept apprised as we develop that follow-up to this session, and will be invited to participate. So thank you. And Jennifer, I believe, will be the facilitator of that, I hope. So thank you. So the transition to discussing services and programs. I put a quote on the screen you see in front of you that Christine provided, which says that we are all part of our community's mental health well-being. We have the opportunity, so let's be wellness and strength-based in our work as we move forward. Jennifer talked about this in terms of how our interactions themselves can be therapeutic, and that just by being there, we make a difference. So I'm going to open the floor to Dee Dee and to Christine to talk about what the range of services are that are currently available and how do people access them. And we can talk a little bit more within that about how we help connect someone to care. So Dee Dee, do you want to start?
I was going to say Christine can start, but it's fine. Sure, I'll start. Thanks for having me, and Jennifer and Sandra, I really appreciated your presentation. I think, a lot of times, because of people's idea or association with mental health, they're not readily going to access services, and especially traditional services. They have a hard time, they struggle with that. One of the things that we're seeing in our call center, and I'll just make you aware that the BH Link call center is not just the crisis hotline, but it's also the state suicide prevention hotline. And we're also the 942 stop, which is the recovery housing hotline. So we answer the phone for crisis, mental health and substance use, substance disorder calls, and we answer for the suicide prevention helpline for the state and for 942, which is sort of like not just the housing, but also an answer to the opioid crisis. So we have a lot of calls coming into the call center. And we have been seeing an increase in fear-based calls, people calling because, they're afraid of what this crisis is doing to their home, to their job, to their community. And a rise in suicide calls, and also a rise in just people dealing with trauma that they have never dealt with before. Now they're faced with the trauma because of the pandemic and what they're seeing. And because they're more isolated now, they're having to face the trauma. Our phone screeners are trained in the suicide prevention work. They're trained in crisis intervention work. They're trained in mental health first aid, and also ECPR. And I'm not sure, and they continuously get training in things like motivational interviewing, trauma-informed care, crisis time intervention. So they are trained in those programs so that they will be better to handle the calls that they receive. So I just want to let you know that BH Link is a major the crisis helpline is a major resource to you. Not only when you call there, are you speaking to a person who is well trained, but they also have what I call the resource Bible, and it's a binder about this thick. I have it beside me. I don't want to lift it up and show you, but it's about this thick, and it has a ton of resources in it, anywhere from church or faith-based programs to programs for children. What kind of fun things can your children do during this COVID crisis or during this time, or what kinds of services are available for children? So they have that resource binder available to them. And they also have a way in which to access resources through other states, because even though we answer the suicide prevention helpline here in the state, if someone who has a 401 area code is in Florida, we still get that call. And so we have to know the resources that are available in Florida. So we have a connection to resources that are available domestically in the United States. So some of the resources that I use to help not just my call center, but also my past experience has been in domestic violence, homelessness, and HIV and AIDS. So I've worked in many different fields, and along those jobs and those experiences, I've been able to collect quite a few friends and resources in the community. And some of the resources that I use today to help me to do the work that I do are NAMI. I love NAMI. I think that NAMI offers great support and help to those who are experiencing any kind of mental health crisis, or any just any if they even have any questions. OASIS is a wonderful support. Recently, and I'm not sure if those of you who are who have seen this commercial, it just comes on social media, so it's not on regular TV, but it's for Pause Rhode Island. Pause Rhode Island is a new thing that we have just started talking about, and it's a resource for those who are in Rhode Island who are experiencing any kind of crisis due to COVID. So it helps you to access different support services and so there's support groups listed there, there's providers listed there, there's all kinds of things that are listed there, and more things to come. So if someone is having struggle with knowing resources or just finding information, they can go to Pause Rhode Island, and Pause Rhode Island will link, will have some information there. BH Link, accessing BH Link. The wonderful thing that I love about BH Link, and not just because, you know, I work there, but is because it's a 24-hour service. In the past, if someone was having a problem, they would have to go to the hospital, and the hospital process might not be good for everyone. Now, BH Link is a place where you can go, and they have bays, so it takes away that traditional sterile feel of the hospital and brings in a comfortable, relaxing, accepting and inclusive feeling. And so you go there, you're greeted by a behavioral health worker or a peer, and you talk to them about what's going on with you as you're accessing the clinical services. There's a case manager there to help you to transition or have a warm handoff to another agency. And so BH Link is a very promising place in which we hope to have more around the city at some time. But it's a 23-hour triage, and I say 23 hours because we're allowed to hold people for 23 hours. Triage, mental health and substance use triage center. And so it's the first one in Rhode Island, and it's a nice way to have someone who is not interested in going to the hospital. I also use 211, especially when it comes to elders and accessing elderly care or better aging adults. I use Ripen, and thank you, Seamus. I love Ripen in their peer support program, Anchor in their peer support program. All community health workers, I think, are excellent because it gives us the opportunity to work with people who are helpers in their community and who know their community, know the people, speak the language, know the services, and have access things themselves and are able to help others to access that. The other thing I want to, before I leave you, I want to leave you with the Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless has resources on their page. If you just Google Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless, you will find that they have a wonderful presentation on their page about all the resources, providers, even people who you can contact. And that's the main thing, is to put someone in contact with a person, not just a system. That you can contact that will help you during this time. They also have street sheets, and street sheets is a piece of paper that or a resource that has food pantries, soup kitchens, legal services, churches, all kinds of things, clothing places. It has all kinds of resources that are available to you. So I think that there's a lot of resources in our community that we don't know about, that people have, that they've been using over time, that we as a community, if we got together and just said, these are some of my friends and these are some of my friends, that we could build a great network of resources. I think that, we have to realize that with this pandemic, there has been a lot of things that have closed and a lot of situations have changed, but there are still a lot of people out there that can connect you to services, and you can still get the help that you need, and you are not alone. And it's wonderful to know that providers can talk to one another and access each other to get the resources that they need. I'm at Horizon Healthcare Partners, and I am more than happy to help you in any way that I can. So feel free to give me a call. I'm not going to give you my resource binder, but I will help you to find those resources for you. So feel free to call me.
Yeah, that was a question, Dee Dee. First, I want to let people know, because questions are popping up. You are going to receive an email by Friday, so later this week, will include this slide deck that you're seeing in front of you, which includes multiple pages of resources, including many of those that Dee Dee referenced already. But a question, Dee Dee, was that as a person working in the field, as a community-based advocate, volunteer, community health worker, or other field worker working right now during this pandemic with people, can they make a call to say, what are the, this is the community I'm in, what are the top 3, like no cost, low cost, actually open services that I can refer people to right now? Is that a kind of call they can make?
Absolutely.
Link?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we welcome those calls because a lot of times that call is going to help that person access our services. So it's a great idea to have that person call us to find out. I actually prefer that, that the advocate call, so they'll know that there's a person on the other side of the number that has been given to you, and that person is also accessible. How many times have you called and it's been this I can't stand all services.
Yeah.
And if you do this, hang on to line 1 or whatever, and so it's nice to call and say, hi, this is Becky from, so and so, and I'd really like to know what services are available so I can refer my clients. And that you can get names, you can get numbers, you can get services that are going to be there for your client.
So some of this I think is important because BH Link is relatively new.
Absolutely.
It is an amazing resource for Rhode Island. And I think if we all know how to maximize its benefits, the more responsive BH Link and Kids Link for that matter can be. So,
right.
So thank you, Dee Dee. I'm gonna open it to Christine, who's gonna talk a little more about referrals, the range of programs that are out there, and a little bit more about how you can help connect people. Christine.
Thank you. I want to just kind of go on something that Dee Dee talked about being a bridge, that as people in the community, that it's making those calls on behalf of clients can be really, really helpful in helping people engage. And for all of us as providers, I think recognizing that very first phone call is an access point, that exchange of, hi, how can I help you? And why are you calling? Can make or break access and can set someone who's finally come to the point that they know they want to make that call. If there's any hint of feeling turned away, someone who's in a stressed or vulnerable position will feel that hint of being turned away. So however we can walk alongside of people to help them when they're in vulnerable places and spaces, maybe making calls with them, making calls on their behalf, those are really, really helpful activities and process to help people be engaged and stay engaged. And I think going back to what Jennifer said is also recognizing that we have to be persistent, because we could call somewhere one day and they're full. We could call the next day and they have an appointment. We could call somewhere and there's no beds, and the next day there's a bed. So being persistent, recognizing that it's going to be a process, and that the person we're supporting who's vulnerable or stressed or in crisis, they may not have the wherewithal right then and there to be that persistent. So you as an ally, as a friend, or working with them, can you take that persistence and help them along that path? That's really, really important. And that's a lot of what the Interfaith Counseling Center does. So, and a lot of, I think what I kind of want to highlight a little is when we think there's so many resources, but we have to recognize the barriers to care, because Rhode Island has great providers. We have great community supports. We have BH Link. We have a giant binder, like Dee Dee said. But how do we help all the people who are having difficulty accessing those resources? So what are the missing links in people who need those supports in actually getting connected to them? And I just want to make sure that all of you who are here and working in the community really recognize the importance of you and the work that you're doing, and that you're a link, that you're that link. And that often we have this idea that with someone in crisis, like as soon as I can get them over there, they're going to be good. But again, thinking of the process that it is, and you're really important in that process because you're providing those therapeutic, Jennifer and Sam said that, those therapeutic steps, like helping someone move along the way. And also, I think talking to people about the supports they have in their lives, because as we're stressed, as we're vulnerable, as we're in crisis, we might be slowly pulling away. Sandra, I think you mentioned withdrawing. So if we kind of talk with people like, who are your go-to people, or what do you like to do in your spare time? Because as people have gotten depressed and in crisis, they may have slowly peeled those things back. So if we can, in conversation, remind people of those supports, that can be helpful because we may have forgotten. So reminding people of who is in their community. Maybe they used to be connected to a club or a group or a hobby or a church, or a therapist before. Sometimes if people had a relationship with a therapist and then they didn't go for a while, they feel like, well, I can't go back because I might get in trouble. But generally, providers aren't feeling that way. So that may be something that we can help someone re-engage, that they're not going to be, it's not, it's not like they didn't have their teeth cleaned and they're going to get scolded, that they can go back. So we can be helpful with that. And I think also along those lines too, we're looking at it from like a strength-based approach of what are the strengths you have personally? What do you have in your life? And if we see holes together, then we can work on finding those places and spaces, and reminding people of the things that they may have, and then knowing we have this big giant network that we can access when we need to, and that you as an ally can help with that access point, or you can help connect someone else who can help walk along that process.
And I think all of this is so important. A question that we have, and I know this has been expressed to me in meetings that I've had with some folks, is that it's really hard to find, for those who are bicultural, bilingual, access to a provider that, or a clinician, or even a support group that is made up of people that look like them. Sandra, I know you do a lot of work on this front, and Christine, I know you do too. Could you guys talk a little bit about that? A specific question is there a listing that identifies the demographics and availability of professionals? I don't think there is a comprehensive one, but I'm going to let the two of you talk a little bit about that, because that is it's come up now twice in questions in the Q&A and chat.
Christine, do you want to start?
It doesn't. You can go first.
So,
Thank you.
So I, as a therapist, when I'm doing this, I have difficulties myself helping others find. I actually there is not a comprehensive list. I end up going through Psychology Today, Zen Care, and then all of my network. So Jennifer and I created the Latino Mental Health Network because of this concern, and really starting to help and support bilingual cultural professionals, because we know how few of us there are and how exhausting that can be. So in that front, it's really, we need to support each other in doing this work. And the more that we do that, the better we can. And I think the more we start talking about mental health, the more bilingual, bicultural people will go into their master's program. And so Jennifer and I are really trying to educate in that front in order to be able to provide that support for people to go on past the bachelor's. So there's systems that are working at a larger space in order so we can have more. And then there's these other websites that can help in the interim, and that can just provide additional resources. Christine?
I'm thinking of how, stigma is one of our biggest barriers to care, and that there isn't really a comprehensive list. And I do the same thing as you, Sandra, and really rely on community groups. So when looking for someone of a particular cultural background, I might go to a particular community group or network within a faith community or a particular group doing work in that community. So I encourage people working in our various communities to try to know all those different levels of group all those different groups, because a group that we think may not have a connection to mental health may happen to know a provider or may happen to know someone who does. So the more when working in a community, the more we can know all the different things that are happening, and then we can help build those networks. We can help build where we can all network and connect together. So a group we may not think of, I'm thinking like the Nonviolence Institute has a support group. So knowing, if we know, within different groups, who's doing what kind of work, we can network to different avenues of care and support that way, and hopefully continue to build those bridges.
Can I also add something? So one of the things that I personally did in looking for a therapist, because I worked in this state and I wanted someone who didn't know me, and I wanted a Black woman, because I'm a Black woman and nobody knows a Black woman more than a Black woman. Mm-hmm. I went outside of my state and I went to Massachusetts and asked people in Massachusetts who they would recommend in my state for me, that may not have known me. And the way I connected, like I got connected to the NAACP, the NAACP connected me to someone here. So I say that to say to you, do non-traditional things to reach that goal. And also don't just think of it inside the box of Rhode Island. Go outside of Rhode Island to Southeast Massachusetts, Connecticut, like go to those places and ask who's here in this state or who can provide services to you that you might not otherwise access. And I do love Psychology Today and Zen. I think they're wonderful. I love the fact that you two ladies have created the Latino Mental Health Coalition, or I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, but I think that's a wonderful place. But I also think, it's real important that people know, even though that person might not be who you think they are, they might not have what you think they could have. They could offer you something that you don't even see right now, that you're not even looking at right now. So don't just close yourself out to. I closed myself out to a Black woman. I wanted a Black woman, but actually I ended up with a Latina woman who is fabulous, and I wouldn't trade her in for the world. So I always tell my clients, don't close yourself off to hearing that somebody else could understand your experience. And I also want to say, it's very important for me that clients have choice, that it's client choice. So whatever the client chooses, I go in the way in which they want. It's their choice, whatever they need, however, and that helps me with building resource lists for them, because they tell me what they want, they tell me what they need.
I want to interject before we wrap this part of the conversation up, that people, and in the resources we're sending out, there are like Thunder Mist offers counseling in both in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. The Providence Center has a program that is for Spanish language speakers. The Interfaith Counseling Center can help with referrals in addition to BH Link. And if people specify, then, as Dee Dee said, ask the question, ask around. But if you have folks who, one, get turned off by intake that happens at the community mental health centers or other more formal programs, there are a full range of support groups and community-based programming through the Department of Education, through faith communities, through NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, that every day, every single day of every week, and they have transitioned these to online, they have support groups happening, and they do have Spanish language support groups. There's the Can We Talk program that Christine alluded to, which is really focused on supporting people in the community heal their trauma. There's Hope Health, which is a grief support group that offers a Spanish language support group. These will be in the list of resources we send you, and these can be a bridge. If someone you are working to help can't get an appointment right away or isn't quite ready to go through the more formal intake process of getting connected with a therapist, or is on a wait list to see a therapist, some of these support groups can be an important interim mechanism, because we can't all do it all, right? Like if you're a community health worker and you're working with 20 households, and several of them need this kind of guidance and support, you can be there for them, but you might need help being there for them. And some of these programs can be that help. And you taking the time to connect someone in these more informal networks can be critical. There's also a whole series divided by region of the state of substance use peer recovery call lines. Those will be in the resources. That's critically important. The Parent Support Network trains and employs peer support counselors and helps various groups to host these call lines. So look for that in the resources that we send out. As Dee Dee said, the programming goes deep. The problem is we aren't all aware of all that is out there. So any last questions? So I asked that question. Let me just double check the Q&A. So that question about an actual listing of service providers, we talked about that. Anything anyone wants to add, any panelists want to add before we move on to talking a little bit about insurance and cost related to mental health care?
Well, I just wanted to add about the list, that there are a few lists, like we, as the Latino Mental Health Network, Sandra and I, do have, providers that are Spanish speaking that are mostly in private practice. And I know I've seen a lot of different lists for other providers, like on social media. So there are a few lists. I think some of the barriers are like who is keeping up with the lists, and it's not like Zen Care that you're able to see if they're taking patients or not. So you have to go through the list and call everyone. So I know that that's the barrier, but there is one that we have for Spanish speaking.
Great, thank you, Jennifer.
Can I add something really, or Sandra, did you want to add to that?
The only thing is encourage, and it's on this call, is to try or to research what these are, the different types of help that's out there. Because some people may be really, if a community mental health center is wonderful for some people, and some people aren't a good fit, and vice versa. So it's really important to do our research as the people that are referring others. What is, a support group or AA group, Alcohol Anonymous? What does that look like? The trauma-informed group that or the trauma group, support group that Christine was talking about at the Nonviolence Institute. If you can go and join as a provider and just ask if you can be participate and just be in there, so you can see what it's actually about. So then you have a sense of how to refer to what system or to what providers or what someone may need. So the more informed we are, the better we can refer.
I just want to highlight too of being aware of, us being informed because of, cost and insurance and those kind of, so once we get to the connection, then, that persistence piece of knowing we may have to pivot because the insurance may not match up, and also encouraging people, if you're helping someone to connect, don't be afraid to ask about a sliding scale. Don't be afraid to ask if there are any programs where the care would be reduced fee or through a grant program. Because again, those are questions that might be hard for someone in crisis to navigate, advocating for themselves. So anytime we can help advocate for someone, so not being afraid to ask about that, because insurance and finances can be a really big barrier to connecting to what may seem like the right next step. So, thanks.
Thank you. I'm typing a response in the chat. Thank you all. Yeah, sliding scale feels the fees as transitioning into cost and coverage. Thundermist offers sliding scale. There are other programs. Clinica Esperanza offers Spanish language support, behavioral health support, free or sliding scale to people who are uninsured or underinsured, et cetera. There are some opportunities. We know that they're limited. But we also have laws that require our insurers to cover behavioral health services. I know there's a lot of confusion among people. They just assume, a lot of people just assume that even though they may have an insurance card in their pocket, that it's not going to cover the kinds of services that we're talking about. So I want to invite Seamus, again, Seamus Durack. He's with the call Consumer Health Insurance Consumer Helpline at the Rhode Island Parent Information Network. And he's going to go over, and this gets a little bit weedy, so be patient, but it's important that we all better understand our insurance network as it exists today. So Seamus, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Karen. And I promise I'll try to stay out of the weeds, because as an attorney, I can get really into it and just go for way too long about it, but I don't think anyone came here for that today. Thanks again, Karen. Thank you to Jennifer, Sandra, Dee Dee, and Christine for the really comprehensive discussion around the importance of access to care, especially during the pandemic, and some of the ways that individuals can get connected with that care. I'm here, I want to talk a little bit about the work that RIPEN, the Rhode Island Parent Information Network, does, and particularly about the work of our call center. And then I'll touch a little bit on how insurance works in the behavioral health world, how some of the services that are out there to assist people who are having difficulty in getting their insurance to pay for the services that they should be entitled to. And then I want to make sure that there's some time for any questions that people might individually have for that care. So about the Rhode Island Parent Information Network, RIPEN, we are a statewide nonprofit. We were founded in 1991 by a group of parents of children with disabilities. We started off kind of assisting individuals with navigating the educational system, and then grew out into assisting with individuals with disabilities in navigating the health system as well. We've since expanded to be somewhat more comprehensive. We assist anyone statewide, regardless of disability, regardless of health insurance status, regardless of where they get their coverage, in navigating a wide variety of both educational and health-related programs. We serve tens of thousands of Rhode Islanders every year. We've got about 100 employees. It's been kind of floating around that mark for the past 6 months or so, of whom the slide says about half are stationed out in the community, and in a normal day that's accurate. Right now, I think we're pretty much all stationed out in the community because we're all working from home. And we're built on a peer model, which means that the majority of our staff, actually the vast majority of our staff and the majority of our board of directors, are parents of kids with special needs, who have potentially even used our services in the past to help navigate some of the educational and healthcare systems, or are individuals who have navigated those systems themselves, either on their own behalf or on behalf of a loved one. And I believe we are still the largest employer of community health workers in the state of Rhode Island. And so we're very committed to kind of the community model and ensuring that we know some of the resources out there for people to take advantage of, and that in every one of our programs, we're able to kind of provide a wraparound level of support. To talk a little bit about the RIPEN call center, we operate a live answer phone helpline for Rhode Islanders with any sort of issue with regard to health insurance in the state of Rhode Island. We provide advocacy from start to finish. When you call someone, generally the person that you speak to first is going to be the person you're going to speak to for the length of your case. We don't ever anticipate that we're going to be able to resolve any problem with just one phone call. And so because these issues are complicated, we want to make sure that people who call us have someone who is their advocate rather than just calling in and talking to somebody different every time. We have expertise in staff around a lot of different issues, including legal support, including support with educational issues that kind of correspond with health issues. And we deal with a wide variety of issues. We deal with people who have lost their access to coverage, especially during the pandemic. That's been a big issue in making sure that people do have the ability to continue having health insurance coverage, even with potential job loss or financial difficulties. And we also help with when insurance companies deny access to treatment. We help with medical bills. We help with options for access to care for the uninsured. And we try to help with health insurance literacy for anyone who calls in and is looking for support with that. Move to the next slide. Thanks. So to talk a little bit about kind of the status of access to behavioral health coverage in Rhode Island, it's important to have kind of a little bit of an idea of where Rhode Islanders get their coverage from. So this is a very non-scientific breakdown of that. About a quarter of Rhode Islanders get coverage through Medicaid. About half get coverage through work, which is split between the self-insured and fully insured market. I'm not going to get into too much detail around that, except to say that there are different rules that apply to different segments of this market. And so it's important to know when you're looking at a plan that you get through your work, whether it's self or fully insured, to know what rules are going to apply. About 20% of Rhode Islanders have coverage through Medicare. About 10% or so have coverage, a little less than that, through HealthSource Rhode Island. And at last count, about a little less than 5%, I believe, of Rhode Islanders are uninsured currently. And so, like I mentioned, the Ripon Call Center provides a pretty comprehensive list of services for individuals who are having difficulty with accessing care through their insurance, including around access to medical, to payment for medical bills. And one thing that we really focus on in our work within the mental health world is something called mental health parity. There's a couple of laws out there. There's a state law and a federal law that both require what they call parity in how mental health and medical and surgical procedures are covered. And what that generally means, what that breaks down to, is that behavioral health and substance use disorder benefits cannot be more restrictive than other benefits. It doesn't mean that every provider out there has to be covered by your insurance. They can still have a network. But what they have to do is they have to treat mental health and medical surgical health the same. That means in things like financial requirements, they can't have higher copays, higher deductibles, higher coinsurance amounts for behavioral health services than they do for medical health services. You can't have a separate deductible that you have to meet in order to get behavioral health treatment. They also can't have different approaches to treatment limits. They can't put a cap on the number of visits that you have per year for your mental health therapist, but not put a cap on the visits for example, a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. They can have those limits, but they have to be the same for both. They can't restrict behavioral health more than they restrict medical and surgical health. And then there's also probably the most complicated one of these is around non-quantitative treatment limitations, they call them. It's a mouthful, but what it means is they can't essentially make it more difficult for you to access benefits in the behavioral health world than in the medical surgical health world. They can't say that things are, or they can't be more restrictive in what is or is not medically necessary for behavioral health. They can't have a more restrictive drug formulary for behavioral health treatment prescriptions. And they can't impose, for example, fail first policies or step therapy for behavioral health when it doesn't apply for medical surgical health. This can all get really complicated, but that's actually something that Ripon can assist with. If you think that your plan is treating behavioral health coverage differently than it is medical surgical health, or if you're just simply having difficulty in access, that's something we're available for. So to come back to the breakdown of the Rhode Island insurance market, parity only applies in certain areas. because health insurance is complicated and laws apply differently to different segments in the market. There's no parity laws that apply to Medicare or to Medicare Advantage plans. Now, that being said, most Medicare and Medicare Advantage plans are still going to cover behavioral health. They're just not going to be subject to the same parity laws. Self-insured plans, those are generally with larger employers, are exempt from state law, so only federal parity law is going to apply there. And then in just about every other form of insurance, parity does apply. And so to move forward a little bit into kind of how Ripen fits into this mold, any decision that is made in the insurance world is generally going to be appealable. It's anytime that you get a letter saying that something is not going to be covered, or if you get a bill from a provider because an insurance claim didn't go through, you can generally appeal that. It's often best to appeal in writing just so you have a record and so you can kind of move things forward. A lot of insurance companies will allow you to do an appeal over the phone, but we generally recommend you do it in writing just so you know exactly what the argument you're making is. You do need good medical evidence in support of that, and that's something frequently your provider is going to be willing to connect you with. And the exact rules around appeals are going to depend on what kind of coverage you have, but these are all things that Ripen can assist with. So if you, someone you're working with, someone you're supporting, someone in your family, or somebody you just happen to know, are dealing with the denial of coverage for mental health treatment, or you believe that your plan is treating mental health differently than it does medical and surgical health, please call us. Our number's there. It'll be in the materials that are coming out. It's 401-270-0101. We offer assistance in both English and Spanish. We operate, like I said, a live answer call center that is available from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. And you can also email in complaints or concerns through an email address that's available on our website. I want to offer some time for any questions too around health insurance. If people have specific questions, feel free to drop that in the chat.
So Seamus, I think what's most critically important here is that people understand we have this amazing resource at Ripen, that there are people like you who know this stuff in and out, and can help, not only in getting, addressing a problem they may be having and getting their mental health care covered by their insurer, but with any other health insurance related challenge or problem. And for the folks on this webinar, this is an important resource. You might be hearing about people who are saying, well, I feel like I need to talk to somebody, but I can't because I can't afford it. Call the call center to see what your insurance really covers. If you're uninsured, there are programs available that you might be able to connect with, free programs in the community. If you talk with someone and they've gotten a surprise medical bill, maybe it's related to COVID or mental health, they get a bill that, wait a minute, I thought I didn't have to pay anything here. Call and ask that question at the call center. These folks are very good at what they do. They save Rhode Islanders a lot of money every year by helping address some of these claims that seem out of whack. So this will be, and the information about the call center will be a part of the resource package that gets emailed to everybody following this session. Seamus, I don't have specific questions popping up, but maybe some of the other panelists have thoughts on this issue of our complex, complicated insurance network and system, and the multiple different ways that people have for paying for their health care. Any thoughts that anyone else wants to weigh in on before we move along?
So I think one of the things I often talk about and I help explain to people is that the idea of health insurance for everyone was not a concept until not too long ago. And so we need to remember that and be able to help people navigate what health insurance is. as first generation professional, didn't really know how to navigate it because I didn't grow up with it. And so my parents couldn't provide me the education. So I had to get other resources in the community to help me navigate those things. And still, even as a mental health provider, in working within a hospital system, there's still things that I can't really know or figure out. So this is such a wonderful resource that I really didn't know about until maybe 6 months ago. And it's really important that there are people out there that if they don't have the answer, they're going to help you get connected with finding the answer. We don't always have them, but we'll help with the connections.
Yeah, I think that's the critical thing. And I think it's important also for us all to know if someone is saying, I can't get the care I need because I can't afford it. The majority of Rhode Islanders have coverage. In Medicaid, there are no copays. There are no coinsurance fees. So if a person has Medicaid coverage, cost shouldn't be a barrier. If they're covered by their employer and they've lost their job, they should be visiting Health Source Rhode Island. Loss of a job during this pandemic and any time is considered a life change that allows you special access to getting low or very low and sometimes free coverage through Health Source Rhode Island. And if you're unsure, if you're uninsured, and you think maybe you qualify for some help in getting coverage, call the call center because they can help connect you to a navigator. They can help answer some questions. So it isn't a panacea. Our country still has not figured this out well enough, but the call center is a terrific resource that can help bridge the wall of confusion around insurance coverage. And the more we share that with people out in the community, the better. Any other last comments panelists want to make? We've got, it looks like we've got about 5 minutes left. I want to thank everybody who's been here today. You'll see the first page of resources. You are going, those of you who are have registered for this webinar will receive an email by the end of this week that includes the slide deck, resource list, as long as it's okay with the panelists, the list of panelists, maybe with your emails attached, we'll double check on that. And any other resource materials that panelists have provided me that I can share back out. Also watch as for follow-up webinars that we hope to schedule for right after the new year. We wanted to get this one done upfront and early because we know we're in such a crisis moment, and with the holidays coming and the rising cases with COVID, we thought it was important. But you will get an email at the end of this week and then follow-ups as we schedule and plan more deeper dive sessions on some of these important topics. Any last comments from panelists?
I make a quick last comment. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone and everyone who came today. Like, we're the boots on the ground, diminishing stigma around mental health care. So don't be afraid to share the resources with other people you know, because we never know who may need a resource. So, as we share so many things in our world right now through social media and stuff, don't be afraid to share resources, just as an FYI to people. And the more we all talk about mental health and normalize it and talk from a wellness perspective, the more we all participate in our community's wellness. So thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
And I want to ditto everything that Christine said. I think to the panelists, you guys rock. You know, the work that you're doing is awesome. And thank you so much for doing it. Like Jennifer and Sandra said earlier, just check in on people and make sure that they're okay. And if there's someone that you're living with and you notice these things are happening, let them know that there are resources out there to help. And Seamus, I just think that the resource that you're offering is so awesome and it's needed, because even for folks who are underinsured, they have questions that they are afraid to ask, and nobody ever talks about that. So I think that that's a wonderful thing. Karen, thank you so much for putting this together and inviting me to be a part of this. I feel blessed to have been here. I also just want to say that, you know, I'm also a pastor in the community, and this it touches the faith-based community so much, and people are so afraid of speaking out about it. So anytime you can educate those who are faith-based leaders, please do that as well, because if for your own church and your own faith, your own faith leaders, please educate them so that they can help their congregations, because it's very important that we get this message out, not just to those who are seeking these services already, but for those who haven't even thought about it and need it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you for being here today. So thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to the attendees today. Look forward to seeing all of you in future sessions, hopefully. And I'm wishing everybody well in these times and for the coming holidays. And best to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, panelists. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great.
Yeah, you'll get a follow-up email and thank you from me as well. Best to everyone.
Bye.
Bye.